Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 30 of Move More, Worry Less. I'm your host, Paige Vesta, the founder and designer at 13 Fit Apparel. Andrew Weisse, the author of the Psychedelic Blog, joins me today for a second time to talk about the intersection between psychedelics and fitness. This topic is fascinating and it gets me really excited, so I hope that you're excited and ready for this episode. Enjoy! Andrew, it is so good to have you back on the podcast, and I want to jump right into everything. But before we do, for anybody who didn't listen to our last episode, I would love to give a little intro on you. And yeah, so let's just start by saying who you are and that, and then I have another question.
Sure. So first of all, awesome to be back. And yeah, my name is Andrew Weisse. I write about psychedelics on Substack. It's been really awesome to take my experiences, my education on this kind of emerging world and share it with people. And so, yeah, I'm really excited to continue the discussion that we had last time.
Me too. So for anyone listening who did not listen to our last episode, Andrew and I met years ago doing CrossFit. We kind of started our journeys around the same time. So Andrew, if you want to give maybe let's do like your journey into fitness that like kind of led you to psychedelics, which could seem not related, but the whole topic today is how they have a lot of things in common and parallels and all of that. So let's talk about your fitness journey and how that led you to the world of psychedelics, which is so cool. And I'm really excited to talk about it.
Yeah, I think I'm happy to. I think there's novelty to this like path, but I don't think that's going to be the case for a long time. So it's actually apropos to what's coming up on Wednesday will be my 7-year CrossFit anniversary. And for those that don't do CrossFit, or maybe that do, maybe it's odd to actually memorialize the date with like an anniversary the way you would with like, when you get married to, but I do. And I'm very, I remember it every single year because it was the, tipping point, right? Like it was kind of in many ways, my second life began after I discovered, fitness. And what spawned that was, I was living in New York City. I was, typical lifestyle, traveling a lot, working really hard, making a lot of money, but also partying a lot. And that lifestyle was really kind of catching up to me. And then in 2014, my sister unexpectedly passed away. And I found myself kind of just, really grief stricken and, living just this vapid life. And, the good thing about grief is it can catalyze like profound introspection and, and really just kind of start to, really catalyze significant changes. And so one of the first changes I made was in May of 2015 when I joined CrossFit, and immediately just, things started changing for the better, diet, sleeping better, getting these really hard workouts that are really challenging myself for the first time in like, over 10 years, ultimately ended up quitting drinking. But I just, it fell short of like the complete solution for healing. And for a lot of people, it probably, that might not be the case. Like, they've developed a relationship with their fitness and that's all they need in perpetuity to guide them for the rest of their lives. That wasn't the case for me. And I suspect that's not going to be the case for a lot of other people. In 2019, I started, attending various psychedelic ceremonies, and that really solved like the few missing pieces of living the life that I wanted to live. And I would also just kind of end this by saying, like, inversely, I don't think that just doing these psychedelic journeys over the last several years, independent of doing alongside the fitness, would have been a path to healing either. It really was like the coalescence, like the marriage of the two that allowed me to find happiness, find peace, and find joy. One without the other wouldn't have worked. And I'm excited to talk about, this intersection and why I think so many people could possibly, benefit from the two.
I love that you said, like you found fitness and from what I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, it's like you find this thing that is helping you find happiness, become better, heal. And at least, and for me in my journey, I was like, there was a point where I was like, wow, I found the answer, fitness, like this is the thing.
Yeah.
But then as you continue your journey and you fall into like your fitness habits and whatever happens along the line, fitness is not the end all be all to self-development.
Right.
But yeah, I think that my point is that, you know, fitness is so wonderful, but there are other things in self-development and self-exploration. And I think that this is such an interesting topic and something I probably never would have been interested in or explored if it wasn't brought to my attention by you, which now it's like been on the top of my mind since we've been talking. And it's absolutely fascinating. So I'm going to stop rambling and I'm going to give you the floor because
Sure.
you know the stuff and you're going to make this sound much better than I am right now. So I'm going to let you kind of take the lead here. I don't have a specific question in mind, but I know that we have topics we want to talk about and just kind of the intersection between fitness and psychedelics. So let's do it.
Yeah, happy to. And one that's incredibly verbose, you never have to worry about apologizing for rambling. I don't think anybody does that better than me. So I think let me share my hypothesis, right? Like I think I've thought a lot about why the two work together. Because let's just like on its veneer, like it would almost seem like these two could be, you know, at odds, right? Like psychedelics have always had an association with like drug use and ways to get high and a party culture, and then fitness is more of the like disciplined, you know, good diet structure, like, right? And where do those two even possibly merge? It's two different types of people that flock to both. But I think that's just a complete, you know, misunderstanding of what the two provide. And I'll start with saying why I see a convergence of the two is that the self-help industry, it's often referred to as like the self-improvement industry, is $11 billion. That's billions with a B. So a significant amount of money is spent on people trying to better themselves. Like look at like, you know, someone like a Tony Robbins who, you know, is making millions of dollars per month just telling people that you're going to live a better life if you listen to me speak. Like that is indicative that, you know, people are seeking healing. They're seeking to live a better life, that they're in some state of despair. Where fitness and psychedelics can merge and I think actually represent like a really unique, compelling solution to this is the mix of short-term and long-term healing. As you know very well, fitness is a long-term game. It's boring for the most part. Like getting really mastering, I don't care what it is, you know, CrossFit, jujitsu, you know, whatever, you know, avenue of fitness you explore, you are going to be inundated with monotony and boredom. And you're going to spend countless hours just repeating certain, you know, movements. And then after you master those movements, it's like, okay, yes, just go do some variation of that for several years and you will see results. And a lot of people will be okay with that and won't attrit and they'll stay on that path like you and I did. And they'll see great results and accomplish things they could never have dreamed of over time. And that's a beautiful thing. But a lot of people will attrit out because there's no immediacy to it. The results just take too long and they'll go chase the next thing and they'll attrit. Where psychedelics come into play is they are not a gradual solution. They are, in some cases with certain psychedelics, it is literally an overnight solution where, oh, hey, you have past trauma and grief over this one thing that happened in your childhood. Well, if you go attend an ayahuasca ceremony, you might encounter that trauma head on, or you go do ketamine assisted therapy and you're able to disassociate from the actual trauma and view yourself going through it several years later, removed and you know, compartmentalize the experience and move on. So what better like marriage of two things that are uniquely positive, that actually help you, that both are short-term and gradual long-term and gradual, and then short-term and immediate. And that's fitness and psychedelics. And to me, it's almost as if like having discovered both of these things and having a good amount of experience with both now under the hood, like what a better way to do this than SSRIs and self-medicating in perpetuity, or impractical stuff like reading a self-help book, which doesn't affect neuroplasticity of the brain. It'll make you feel good. You might, do things differently for a week or so, but it's not really going to change who you are. Why not actually do something that's hard and takes a really long time? And then, at whatever cadence you determine, once in a while, really go in and go on a journey that's going to change everything about, your the past and the things that are bothering you, the things that are leading you to live in despair. And so these two could absolutely become, synonymous with like, oh yeah, I improved myself by doing, 4 psychedelic journeys a year and training hard 5 days a week.
Right. Prior to your more recent experience with psychedelics for healing purposes, did you experiment with psychedelics before that for like the quote unquote partying?
Yeah, I did in college. We did like mushrooms at parties.
Yeah.
I think, and Molly probably as well. But what's interesting is like I didn't enjoy it, right? And I actually have a hypothesis that, because now I think one of the risks, and I write a lot about this on my blog, but like one of the risks of psychedelics becoming more and more mainstream is this like recreational association. And, one of the things, I was having a conversation with my partner about this, and, she had mentioned how she had a bunch of friends that were like, taking mushrooms at Palm Springs, at the pool. And my strong hypothesis is like, they're not enjoying that. They're doing it because it's cool and it's like the new thing. And why do we buy certain types of clothes and go to certain restaurants, right? Like we will do what we think is, the optics matter, right? But I with a lot of conviction, my hypothesis is that they are not enjoying that. And I didn't enjoy it recreationally either, but I said I did because it was cool to say that I did. So I had experience with these medicines in a recreational capacity. I yielded almost no benefit from them. And then when I started like reading about them, studying them, taking them seriously, and then attending these ceremonies that were like shaman led with people that had an intention, that's when I realized like, oh, wow. Yeah. Like they are being totally misused, currently. And I really hope that this time around with the psychedelic renaissance that's happening, we get it right. And they're, used for the purposes they are, which is not to augment a fun night out, but to heal just the inordinate amounts of pain that so many of us, go through life with.
So I have an interesting perspective from a friend of mine, and I'm curious your take on it too. And I wish she could be in this conversation with us. So she listened to our last episode together, and afterwards we were together and she was like, I listened to the episode and I have an opinion. And I was like, well, tell me. And it's also very interesting to me because I've never done psychedelics, not recreationally, not therapeutically, just I'm completely on the outside now, still learning.
Sure.
And she was like, she's done different medicines or if drugs, however, whatever perspective you're coming from, for fun. But her opinion was that, although it's in a recreational sense, her experience was still healing in a way. And that I'm not articulating it the way that she said it to me, but essentially like that it was like kind of a combination. I hope I'm not quoting her, but basically that like, just because it was just for recreation doesn't mean it didn't have healing, and she wasn't seeking some sort of therapeutic effect essentially.
Yeah, I think that's excellent point to kind of discuss. Here's one just like ethos of psychedelic medicines in my experience and my education. The medicine will teach you what it's meant to teach you. And so just as I say, when I hear about a group of people taking it at a pool party at a posh hotel, they're not really enjoying it. I'm saying that because it is unlikely that the medicine in that type of context is going to have this illuminating effect, is going to bring closure to past things, or just make you laugh incessantly, which is also a beautiful thing, just to kind of forget about, the daily struggles and, trials and tribulations of life, right? But the scenario that you lay out is absolutely one of the wonderful things about these medicines. Like, it can be taken in a recreational setting, and while that might, limit its ability to reach its potential, there's absolutely, precedence for people, taking psychedelics and having these, incredible epiphanies and enlightenings and moments, regardless of context. I tend to advocate for, ritualistic use of psychedelics, and really being intentional about why are you taking them, where are you taking them, who are you taking them with.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of that is also like, I'm safeguarding, right? Like, I'm writing about these things. I don't want ever to be, they're not for everyone. And I've taken them in a bunch of different ways. So I'm really just relying on my own experience. But if, someone's first experience, or, whatever experience on psychedelics is, taking it with a bunch of friends at a party, or a group of friends, and they end up laughing incessantly for 4 hours, that's, certainly not a bad thing. And the medicine that was the lesson, right? The medicine was teaching that person, hey, like, you live too seriously. Like, you're taking this thing. It's a dance. Life is a dance. It's not a journey. People that tell you it's a journey have an incentive to tell you that. But it's really just a dance under the stars. And, you're taking yourself too seriously. And that's an excellent walk away. And that can happen agnostic to, what type of setting you take it with and who you set it with. I would just say to your friend, like, whatever her experience was in a recreational setting, okay, now take that same medicine and take it in the forest, with a shaman present and a loved one nearby. And I think what you will find is some incredibly powerful lessons that are really life lasting will come, which may or may not have come in a setting that isn't as conducive to, a psychedelic enlightened experience.
I find that very fascinating, because it's almost, and again, correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, but it seems to me like and I guess just like with anything, right? It's not black or white. You could have psychedelics in like a very ritualistic ceremony, like it's very, the way it's supposed to be, and then, oh gosh, Andrew, talking is so hard. Okay. But I think where I'm going with this, but then, you can have it in a more relaxed setting and still learn something from it. But there's a scale, right, on maybe what the experience is going to teach you. But I really appreciate that, because I have a tendency to be very, I like rules,
Sure.
and I like structure. So since we've spoken, I've been in my head like, well, I need to find a shaman. I need it to be exactly what Andrew said.
Yeah.
And I'm like very fixated on that. But it's kind of difficult here because nothing's legal. And, it's just, there's been some roadblocks. So it's just interesting, because it's like, maybe I don't have to be that serious. Like you're saying, like the lesson could be, don't take life so seriously. And that's something I'm 100% guilty of. Everything to me is like, can I check it off my list? Is it productive? Is it, does it follow the rules or whatever? So, that was a terrible ramble, but yeah.
No, it's a sensible one. And I think I want to make sure we're also not painting with too broad of a brush. Like psilocybin, MDMA, these are psychedelics that, taking with a small group of trusted friends, as long as no one's like driving, the risk is minimal, right? Mm-hmm. When we start getting into like ayahuasca, or my personal favorite, 5-MeO DMT, like, yeah, you take that by yourself, you take that just with a couple of friends, like the results could be catastrophic. Like, one, you're going to lose, your cerebellum is going to be completely rendered obsolete. You're going to fall, and who's going to know exactly when your fall is going to happen? Like, you're physically going to lose control of your body, and, a fall could be fatal. So I think, we're likely talking about like psilocybin and the more like entry level.
Okay. Yeah.
When you start, taking things like, I recently, I don't know if we talked about this in the last podcast, but, when I did like ketamine assisted therapy, like, oh my God, thank God there was a therapist there with me. Like, I am no psychedelic neophyte. And I was, just like, whoa, when it started to take over, like, where am I going right now? And thank God there was a medical professional there. And, 5-MeO DMT, the same thing. So, obviously I think the levels of safety that you want to implement will be tethered to the power of the psychedelic. But yeah, I think ultimately, like, these things will teach you what they're supposed to teach you. And I've had journeys on psilocybin where I just laugh for 3 or 4 hours, where me and my partner just, look at trees and the beauty of it all. And I had one not too long ago where I just thought about what I want to do for the rest of my life for 4 straight hours, right? Like same medicine, same dosage, 0 parallels to the experience. And what that tells you is, whatever is happening in your consciousness, whatever the medicine wants to go and unearth, that's where it's going to go. And to a certain degree, that will happen indifferent of the setting that you take the medicine in. I simply recommend and advocate for just mitigating the bad stuff and the journeys, not even just the bad trip, that's a little bit overdone, but just like not getting the most out of it because you've taken it at a pool party with music and conversation and you thought it would be cool. And it was just, it really, that's not really the full potential of what these medicines are here for.
Right. Completely valid. So let's come back to fitness and psychedelics. And I know you have some other points you want to make about the intersection between the two.
Yeah, I think what's patternistic of most philosophy, right? And most people, listening to this, they've heard of like The Power of Now, right? Eckhart Tolle's book, which was an amazing book. And and I went really deep into before I started writing about psychedelics, I went really deep into the research around like self-help and what's out there. And I've read all of the Stoics, Marcus Aurelius, Alan Watts, who now I'm more and more realizing that's where Eckhart Tolle got his stuff from. Like a lot of plagiarism in history I'm learning from all this education that I'm doing. But what is the one thing that they all tell you? Live in the moment. That's the takeaway. Like if you've read one Stoic, you've read them all. It's that people suffer. Like if we actually think about the percentage of our lives where we're actually suffering and we're actually in danger and actually in pain, in the modern world, it's 12 minutes, right? Like we have, we have anesthesia, we can numb pain. Like we spend very little of our actual lives suffering. So where do people suffer? Why is self-help an $11 billion industry? We suffer in imagination. And that imagination is usually one of 2 things, or if you're really unlucky, a marriage of the both, which is past events in your life, which we misremember all the time. Memory is, the same responsible, the part of the brain that's responsible for memory is also responsible for imagination. And that should tell you all you need to know about your memories. They're likely not what you think they are. Or we suffer in the future that we have no idea what it's going to be. It's a fiction movie playing on loop in our minds. And that's where people suffer, the past and the future. And both are made up to a certain degree. Well, the future is all made up and the past is at least exaggerated. And so what do psychedelics and fitness both catalyze? A profound sense of living in the moment. And very few other things do that, right? Like, I don't think SSRIs do, from my understanding. Reading a self-help book tells you to do it, but okay, well, as soon as you close the book, you're back to thinking about like, oh, what did I say in that work meeting? Or, why did that person break up with me? So they're ineffectual. But in a psychedelic journey, one thing that's patternistic among most of the psychedelics is you lose complete sense of time. And you almost kind of like work out the muscle, for lack of a better term, of being in the moment, because when there's no construct of time, you enter a more advanced stage of consciousness where time no longer matters. And there's actually a paradox on this. I hate to digress, but I think it's relevant, which is the paradox of the arrow. So Zeno was a philosopher, and he basically proved that time is nothing more than a construct of the human mind. It doesn't actually mean anything, because if you look at like an arrow in flight, at any one point in time, if an arrow goes from here to here, then it was moving, right? But at one point in time, it was just in dead air, right? It couldn't have just gone from here to there immediately. So at one point, it was frozen in time. It's one of my many tattoos to memorialize how time is just something that we make up. When you're on a psychedelic journey, you start to really understand what Zeno was talking about, that like, oh, wait, yeah, we apply the clock and then and now, but it's not a real actual thing that we're experiencing. We just make it up to help make sense of a complex world. Fitness does the same thing. Anybody that is a martial artist, anybody that has, done a really gnarly competition, whatever the case may be, they have realized that in the moments when it was like really hard, maybe they're wrestling a jujitsu master, maybe they're, at the CrossFit Games trying to finish one of these gnarly workouts, you have zero ability, or, a prize fighter, right? Is another good example. You have zero ability to be in the past or to be in the future when you're suffering like this. In those moments, you are in that moment. And that is an excellent lesson for life, that the more that you live in this moment, the less suffering there actually will be. And psychedelics and fitness, they both have that effect. They both catalyze, okay, you know what? I'm not going to be thinking about 2 weeks ago because I can't, or it doesn't matter. And I certainly am not going to be projecting onto the future because it's just, I'm making things up anyway. And they force us to do that because it's really hard. Like, we developed the ability to live in the past and the future. It had a lot of evolutionary advantages, right? Like, if I remembered how lions hunt, then I avoided that source of predation. If I remembered that when the tide goes out, there's likely a hurricane coming, then I moved my family inland and I avoided dying in a natural disaster. So this ability to think in terms of like the future and the past had a whole bunch of evolutionary purposes. So I'm not saying it's just like, completely, unwarranted, but it doesn't serve us. And especially in the modern day, when most of our, more people are going to die of obesity than famine. You're not likely to die in a natural disaster. This evolutionary skill that we developed has very minimal practical advantages. And I think where psychedelics used by early humans, we now know, and fitness, which was, now a luxury, but used to be the way you survived or didn't survive, they force people to live in the present moment. And I think that's, a great lesson for a lot of people. That's certainly one that I've benefited from.
I love this point of living in the moment, because I think it is something that so many people struggle with, especially now. Like, anxiety and depression rates are really, really high. And I could speak to this personally, that living in the moment is probably one of the most difficult things for me. So I would guess that a lot of people are feeling the same way that I am. And I feel like maybe that's a reason that fitness has become such a big piece of my coping and healing. And I don't know if other people think about this, and I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent of like a personal story, but because it's just sad to me that can be so difficult to live in the moment. Like you're saying, like we live in the past or the future, and that's where we're suffering. And I can pinpoint moments in my life that were the happiest moments that I was living in the moment. And the fact that I can pinpoint them and tell you exactly what those experiences were, because there were so few of them. And that's not to say I've had a miserable life. That's not at all where I'm going with this, but it's like, I have specific memories of like, this is what it feels like to live in the moment. And that's why I'm so happy. And those memories are so vivid for me. Like I'll tell you one of them. I was at the dog park one night with my dog, with my mom, my brother, and my boyfriend. And we were all running around the park like just complete idiots, chasing the dog. And my mom was watching, and it was me, my brother, and my boyfriend. We were just running around like the way it feels like when you're a kid and you're not thinking about anything except for the fact that we're all running around and the dog's going wild, and like it was dark out, and we were just like, and it was probably realistically 10 minutes of my life.
Yeah.
If that. But it's such a strong memory because the feeling of living in that moment was just like joy. And we were just laughing, not because anything was specifically funny, but because it's just like, I don't know. So I really, it's kind of like nice to hear that I'm not the only one who doesn't live in the moment so much,
Oh yeah, I think it's a beautiful story, and thank you for sharing it. And I mean, it is. I would say most people struggle. I mean, even even the person driving the $100,000 car going down the highway, that when you see that, you might think like, oh man, that person, they have it together. They're living the life. Like we have no idea. For all we know, they are in a constant state of projection onto the future, saying like, when I get this, I'll be happy. When I get this, I'll be happy. And if that's your paradigm, it doesn't matter how many cars, houses, things you accumulate, you will never have a moment that you just described that's incredibly beautiful, because essentially what you really described right there was playing. It was playing, right? And when you start taking psychedelics and then starting to like follow and read about folks that have taken that have gone down this path of psychedelic healing, one of the things that's so interesting is they all just talk about the importance of play, and that we as adults we lose that ability. We become structured and serious, and we get jobs and we pay bills, and listen, life is going to ask of certain things, and we all have certain responsibilities we have to adhere to. But the most beautiful moments in your life, certainly in mine, aren't a certain paycheck, they aren't a promotion, they aren't these externally granted and often inversely externally taken away things. They are moments of bliss and playing that we lose as a child. And what's another interesting corollary to that is one of the things that psychedelics seem to do is they give you images of, and this happened to me on 5-MeO DMT, of childhood. For me, when I was 5, and then when I was 20. So childhood and really young adulthood. And I think my theory is, and there's other people that have written about this, is that they are trying to teach us that, like, why did we lose this ability? Why did we stop playing at some point? One of the things I fell in love with my partner over is, we met right before COVID, and then we were, forced to spend all this time together during the lockdown, which benefited me because it brought down her optionality to, from to me or no one. And all of a sudden my stock skyrocketed. But, we would just sit and just laugh incessantly. And I hadn't, ever really spent time with someone like that. She didn't, she was serious and she had her business and all these things, but like, she didn't talk about those things. She didn't, we never once had a political discussion in, the first year of our relationship. It didn't matter. We would just laugh and talk. And it was and I realized, like, that's what life's about. And I think psychedelics can bring you that. And if you're not healthy, then you're never going to enjoy it. So fitness helps you, keep that. Yeah, I think the story you just, shared is at the heart of why I'm writing, is that I think we have a real opportunity to live like better lives, than we currently do. And I think that's evidenced by, the amount of people that are suffering. And you don't need psychedelics too. Like that's the beauty of the story you just shared is, like, for a lot of people, we struggle to have moments like what you just said, and when those moments are happening, there's, we're either, filming it with our phones, or we're still thinking about work, and we're not fully in the present. And for people that struggle with that, which I certainly did, I was always thinking about what's next. Psychedelics can just force you to be like, oh wait, no, actually, this is it. This moment is all I have. There is no tomorrow or next year.
Right. Do you find that your experience with psychedelics has affected your fitness in any way?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. In a uniquely positive way. I'd say in two different ways. So one, the first month after, a journey, whether it be 5-MeO DMT or psilocybin, I find myself to be just far more focused. I think it helps me recenter the prioritization of my life. Right. And this manifests in ways, in different channels in throughout my life. But in terms of fitness, I'm someone that's really competitive. Right. And I want to be top of the leaderboard. I notice that after a journey, I'm like, why do I care? I'm doing this because I want to, live a healthy, good life and, have a beautiful experience. And I get so much enjoyment out of pushing myself. Why do I care if I don't beat that guy over there? Right. Who cares? So I think it helps, in the short term, just kind of reestablish why I love fitness so much. Right. And it's not about being first or second place. It's about just the love of treating your body like the beautiful thing that it is. But I think, more like long-term, like structurally, when I think about my life, like the two have just this natural symbiosis where I'm curing my physical / emotional health with my fitness, and I'm curing my spiritual / emotional health with psychedelics in different ways. And so, the marriage of the two, like, I mean, this is how I'll spend the rest of my life. Like, maybe I won't be able to do, CrossFit in 20 years, but I'll play tennis, right? Like, I'll always have something to keep my body active, God willing. And I will always do psychedelics till the day I die. And most people that really do psychedelics in the right way, like, they'll tell you that it's a lifelong endeavor where, you need to go revisit, your friends on the other side and get those lessons. The marriage of the two has been uniquely positive, like exclusively positive, where they'll both be just regular parts of my life, forever.
You're saying that, like, now that you've experienced psychedelics and all of this, like, it's going to be a lifelong practice. Mm-hmm. How do I ask my question? What does that look like? Like, I don't know if this is like, if you can give like a broad answer, or if this is just like very individual to the person, but is it something where like you could do one experience and then you're set? Or is it like how do you prescribe that, I guess? And I'm not necessarily asking you to prescribe it because, whatever, but my question hopefully makes sense.
No, it does. But I can't be prescriptive, right? Like, prescription without diagnosis is malpractice in medicine, right? And, you have to self-diagnose, you have to diagnose with friends, loved ones. If you have a therapist I'm very lucky that I have a very modern therapist who understands advanced stages of consciousness and the healing that comes with them. I think there are still a lot of therapists out there that view psychedelics as like, oh, these drugs people take, and yeah, I've heard they can help. And if that's your therapist, then maybe get a new one, because they're really just not, they're lacking modernity in their approach. But so impossible to prescribe. But I can answer the question as it pertains to me, and I think there's general like takeaways people could decipher from that. For me, I'm someone that struggled with anxiety my entire life, and I happen to be someone that experienced a pretty traumatic event as an adult, and had several traumas growing up. And so I think for me, it wasn't a one-time cure-all fix. But I think for a lot of people, it absolutely can. There are people that could do one psilocybin journey and say, okay, I've learned the lessons from that, I'm good. Or they do it and it didn't offer them the healing properties and whatnot. I also have a friend who, he's so well read and so well versed in the Stoics and Alan Watts that he gets why people take psychedelics. He has no interest in using them. And honestly, he's someone that he doesn't need them. Like, he's really figured out what life is. I needed psychedelics to get to the level of wisdom that he's at, where he just understands that it's all a game. It's, anyone that thinks that they're controlling their lives and have free will, like, okay, hold your breath. Good luck. So no, you don't have free will, and no, you're not controlling this thing. He never needs to take a psychedelic. So it might be the shortest answer to your question. And as you know, Paige, brevity is not my strong suit, but the shortest answer to the question might be, it might be like a proportionate amount of psychedelic usage is like tethered to the level of trauma that you've experienced. And if you're someone that like served in Iraq and is really struggling, and maybe lost a partner, lost a child, lost a sibling, like, routine psychedelic therapies are great ways for you to not let that loss, that PTSD, that trauma, take over your life and harden you and make it so you're not living a life worth living. For other people, it might require just that one, foray into a different dimension, a different realm, a different stage of consciousness, where you kind of come back and you say like, oh, wow, thank God I learned that lesson. I now know that, the world that we experience is not the entirety of the world. And there's so much more happening that we can't see. And that's enough of like a lifelong lesson, where I never have to go back there and visit it again because it was scary and gnarly and intense, or I just don't have an appetite for it. But the lessons taught me. So I really think, yeah, it is incredibly customizable to the person. And it's good that we have agency over our decisions and we can decide what's best. But for me, it's going to be a lifelong endeavor, because it just, I've had a lot of trauma, and nothing is better for that than a psychedelic journey done right. Yeah.
I mean, every time we talk, it just like gets me so excited about this topic and exploring it more. It sounds like it's like the answer to all my problems. Yeah, because I mean, it's so easy to get wrapped up. And like you were saying, that, people who experience like these psychedelic journeys, you see that the world is not just what this little part that we're seeing. Right. And I find that piece of it really interesting, because it's just so easy to get wrapped up in the day-to-day, in like the little things that feel like big things, that are maybe big things but are not big things. You know what I mean? It's just
absolutely.
And I feel like that it adds you just like add layers and layers of stress to your life by getting wrapped up in all of these little things. And I'm very interested to see what that feels like to have a different perspective on what is little versus what is big.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It'll do that. It'll do all of that.
Yeah. I'm getting hyped up again. I started reading the book that you recommended by Michael Pollan.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what I love about Pollan is he did it. He did the psychedelics. Like, yeah, there's certain things in life that require experiential understanding, like visceral understanding. Like, I wouldn't be qualified to, write about, the struggles of motherhood, right? Like I just, right. You need visceral understanding, right? Like, and that's why, maybe a little bit too, like, throwing the baby out with the bathwater, but like a therapist that has never done a psychedelic journey would be suspect to me. It's like, really? Like, we know these things heal. We know they enter consciousness. Like, just reading about it and writing about it in a textbook, like that wouldn't pass my criterion. Like, Pollan, yeah, he's gifted, he's brilliant, he's all these things, but he went and did every single psychedelic before he wrote that book. And that comes through in the writing. Yeah. And especially after you start taking the psychedelics, you start to realize, like, I use Pollan as an anchor on certain, journeys I've been on. It's like, oh, Michael said this was going to happen. Like he was almost really? Like a de facto shaman for so many unwillingly. He actually had to put like references on his website because people kept reaching out to him, asking him like for advice. And he's like, hey, like, I'm not a shaman. I'm not a therapist. Right. Yeah, he's hit that book. I think I wrote about this in my recent blog, like 100 years from now, when they're writing about the psychedelic renaissance, they're going to point to his book as one of like the big, paradigm shifts societally that he initiated. And he alone really kind of wrote about these in a way that made them, I think, far more appealing to a lot of people, me being one of them, where I also had this like, college kid stigma association. And I realized like, oh, wait, there's no other evolutionary purpose for these medicines to be here other than to potentially heal us, like nothing else. There's no other reason why they would alter our consciousness, create these incredible experiences, other than they're here to heal us. And they are. And I think you did a good job, capturing that.
Yeah, it was funny because after I got the book, I was talking to a friend of mine she's one of my best friends. I haven't seen her in honestly years now because we live far apart, but we go back and forth about different things that we're doing for like our self-development or mental health. And we both started kind of talking about psychedelics separately because she was kind of interested and I had told her about my conversation with you. And then she was like, oh yeah. And she sent me that book, like via text, was like, oh, I was recommended this book. And I sent her a picture back and I was like, I already have it. So it's just kind of funny because, I don't know, it was just funny, small world, but, or maybe not a small world. Maybe it's just because I don't know. I don't have a profound statement to say there, but, before we wrap up, do you have any other, commentary on fitness and psychedelics? Anything that we haven't touched on?
The only thing I would say, the last point, and I'll be writing about this, is, and I think this is a really good thing. I think that we are on the precipice of like a new definition of success. Um, for years, right, there was like this transactional definition of success, like, I make more. And, I think Trump was a good example of that. Like everyone was his enemy, right? And anyone that was against him was a hater. But we're seeing like an unmooring from that, paradigm of success. And one of the things that we're starting to really, see is that like the real success is someone that is living in this moment, that is healthy, that is strong, that is, just in love with life themselves, has like meaningful relationships, right? Like look at someone like the Sadhguru. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he's a guru from India. He's climbed to like millions of followers on Instagram, and all he's preaching is a life of, being fully aware, fully involved, fully conscious. He's on this mission to save the soil and doing these beautiful things. And where I see like, where I'm, I guess, most excited about a marriage between fitness and psychedelics is I think it'll actually like fit nicely into a gradual redefining of what it means to be successful. And what it means to be successful in the next 100 years won't be the amount of zeros in your W-2. It won't be the amount of cars and houses and all that stuff. It'll be, did this person live fully in the moment? Did they love? Were they healthy? I think that's really exciting. And I think psychedelics will get people to a more successful spiritual existence. But that can't be the only thing, because, if you're not healthy, like what's the old quote? Like a healthy man has 1,000 wishes, a dying man has one, right? Like you still need to take care of the body, and fitness will accomplish that. And, I spent a lot of my career in tech, and all of these people that were incredibly successful made it to, the C-level and made all this money. They were often incredibly out of shape, unhealthy, like really unhealthy. And, beauty is subjective, right? And I'm not opining on that. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but health is not subjective. Health is objective. And, the embracing of success at the expense of our physical bodies, like that has to go away. Like I've never met someone that makes a ton of money that is super powerful. Like a Bill Gates is a good example. And then they're incredibly out of shape, clearly ignoring their body. I don't see that as success. That's not successful at all. And I think society is joining like, that type of perspective. And psychedelics and fitness can offer like a new definition of success, which is one of spiritual, awareness and openness and love and an understanding of what life is, along with a balanced, structured, understanding that tomorrow is promised to no one. To live is to suffer. We're all no one's getting out of this thing alive. And so we need to treat our bodies, with the love and respect and hard work and pain that we deserve, because otherwise, the narrative is going to become really, really bad. I'm super excited because I think we're kind of slowly latching on to a better, definition of success. And I think psychedelics and fitness together, get us there in a really awesome way that's going to be so healthy and beautiful for a lot of people.
I love that so much. And I agree with you on the definition of success changing. And I feel like I see that happening, especially with, our generation. I feel like everybody's kind of shifting what the traditional should look like. It used to be, you grow up, you go to college, you get a 9-to-5 job until you're 65, and then you retire. And it's a different, I feel like it's definitely shifting. And to your point, so I'm reading this book. I know, that reading books isn't the same as doing psychedelics, like you said earlier. But I love self-development books. And I'm reading a book called The One Thing, and it's about like the one thing that you do and just prioritizing and just kind of how to achieve extraordinary results. And in the chapter that I read today, and this is what was to your point, he's kind of talking about how to like prioritize your schedule.
Yeah.
And the first thing on the list of priorities is to prioritize your time off, and schedule it, and scheduling in the time for you. So things like fitness or psychedelics, I guess. But because otherwise you can't achieve success if you're not I mean, I guess you can achieve whatever, if you think success is just having a lot of money in your bank account. But to have like a real full life with like success that's beyond a dollar amount, putting yourself first is really important.
The author is absolutely right. I have something I use in my personal calendar called planned disruptions. And I have a minimum of 2 of these in my calendar every day. They range from 30 minutes to an hour based on the busyness of that day. And it's like a planned disruption, which I know sounds like an oxymoron, right? Like, but essentially it's like life's going to throw things at you, that you think your day's going to go a certain way. And then you get a call from grandma or this happens, and the variability of the day ensues. And I know that every single, day I have at least a minimum of 1 hour that's mine. That is a planned disruption. And if the day takes time away from me, okay, well, I have that extra time. And if it's a light day that's going as accordingly, I have an hour to write, think, call a friend, call my mom, do whatever I need to do. Like, I think, it's weird. It's like, I think the association with psychedelics is that it's a lot of people that are like really just unstructured and just, I want to go see God, man. And that kind of stuff. And it's like, I have found that more and more like psychedelics are benefiting people that are like super busy, that are, launching businesses, trying to, raise children, all that stuff. And it's like a great, just recentering activity to kind of focus, like, not just on you, but just, not you, just to forget about all these things and thoughts and conditions and just re-enter like a consciousness that none of those things matter. When you start doing that habitually, it's impossible for that not to influence how you live your everyday life, where, I mean, it's just like 5 years ago, I was just a different person. Like the things that bothered me 5 years ago, I wouldn't even think twice about now. And that's because of, fitness and psychedelics.
Yeah. And I really appreciate your perspective. From my perspective, I know that you follow a lot of, you educate yourself on all this stuff, but to me, you've like redefined what psychedelics or doing psychedelics means and what it looks like, especially knowing you and knowing that like you're regimented in your fitness and you're competitive and all these things. You're not a guy who just like goes out and does crazy shit and like doesn't care. You know what I mean? It's just, it's coming from a perspective of somebody who is really hardworking, who really cares about self-development, who really is focused on fitness. So I just appreciate that perspective, because talking to you over these last couple of weeks or however long it's been has definitely shifted my mindset. And so I think that you are going to shift a lot of people's mindsets to see psychedelics in the medicinal healing way that you've experienced them.
Wow. Well, that's incredibly kind. Well, thank you so much for saying that. That means a lot. Yeah,
absolutely. So just in case our followers haven't found you yet on the internet or the social media, let's just remind them where they can find you.
Cool. Well, many have, thanks to our last podcast. And it was so great to see a bunch of people, sign up. But I'm on Substack. It's my name. So andrewmweisse.substack.com. The name of the blog is the Psychedelic Blog. The cool thing about Substack is there's only a handful of us writing about psychedelics, so I'm really easy to find. It's completely free. You sign up, and I publish every single week without fail. And I cover, I think psychedelics are the main, the fixed part of my writing, but I apply them and the learnings that I've had from them to so many different walks of life and arenas of life. And I hope people are enjoying it. And it's andrewmweisse.substack.com.
Amazing. And we'll put that in the show notes, just if people want to copy and paste it. Well, thank you, Andrew, so much for being here today. This has been so much fun. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. You're awesome.
Likewise. So are you. Thank you so much, Paige.
Thank you, Andrew.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of Move More, Worry Less. If you love this episode, please subscribe, share, rate, or review us to help us grow our mission. If you don't already, follow us on social at 13fit Apparel and visit our website at www.13fitapparel.com. Thanks for listening.